It's January 1879, and in South Africa, the British Army launches an invasion of the Zulu kingdom. Lord Chelmsford is utterly certain that his redcoats will easily destroy the spear-armed Zulu warriors. He has no idea that King Cetshwayo's 20,000-strong Zulu force is already advancing toward the British camp at Isandlwana. The Anglo-Zulu War has begun. In southern Africa, the 1870s are marked by growing tension among the region's three major powers: the Boer republics, the British Empire, and the Zulu Kingdom. By the decade's end, the Anglo-Zulu War will reshape the balance of power in South Africa for generations. The Zulu Kingdom itself rose through the dramatic growth of the AmaZulu tribe's influence and authority. This transformation began under King Shaka, who seized power through a coup in 1816. During his exile, the young Shaka had served as a warrior in a rival tribe, and once he became king, he completely revolutionized Zulu military practice. He imposed conscription on all able-bodied men, who began training at age 14 with the short stabbing spear known as the assegai and a cowhide shield. The spear, called the Iklwa, takes its name from the sound it makes when pulled from an enemy's body. Shaka also introduced a new battlefield strategy known as Izimpondo Zankomo, the horns of the buffalo. This formation had four elements: the chest, which engaged and fixed the enemy, the horns, which swung around to encircle them, and the loins, held back as a reserve. Shaka's disciplined professional army easily outmatched neighboring tribes. What had once been ritualized displays of strength turned into wars of annihilation aimed at completely destroying opposing forces. He absorbed conquered tribes into his domain, and within a few years his army expanded from 350 to 20,000 men, while his kingdom spread over 30,000 square kilometers. Shaka's reign of iron came to an end in 1828 when his half-brothers assassinated him, but his empire and army endured. From the early 19th century onward, the Zulu kingdom stood as both a military and political power in southern Africa. Yet it was not alone, and relations with its neighbors were anything but peaceful. In 1824, the British established a coastal trading post that would grow into the port city of Durban. As Durban developed and more British settlers arrived, tensions rose between the expansionist colonists and the fiercely independent Zulus. Even more troubling for the Zulus was the arrival of the Boers in the 1830s. These Dutch-speaking settlers, long present in southern Africa, moved northeast in 1837 to escape British rule and to found new states. The Boer migrants entered Zululand seeking a land treaty, but soon came into violent conflict with Zulu warriors. In February 1838, the Zulus killed a Boer delegation at what became known as the Battle of Murder Hill, one of several deadly encounters. These clashes sparked a larger conflict pitting the Zulus, already weakened by internal strife, against both the Boers and the British, though the root issue remained territorial control. Zulu fighters sacked Durban, but the Boers later defeated them at Blood River. After that 1838 war, the British and Boers forced the Zulus to surrender large tracts of land. The Boers went on to form the independent Transvaal Republic, while the British expanded the borders of their Natal colony. The following decades were marked by continual border disputes and skirmishes among the three powers. By the 1870s, British authorities in South Africa sought to consolidate control and viewed a political confederation, bringing the Boers and Zulus under British rule as the answer. The main architect of this plan was Theophilus Shepstone, Secretary of State for Native Affairs in Natal. He, like many colonial officials, believed Britain had a duty to civilize the native peoples. As the first step toward confederation, Britain annexed the bankrupt Transvaal Republic, which feared its powerful Zulu neighbors. Both the British and Boers aimed to expand further into Zulu territory, but King Cetshwayo fiercely opposed the repeated Boer incursions. Shepstone, however, came away impressed by the Zulu monarch. Cetshwayo is a man of considerable ability, strong character, and dignified bearing. I do not think he is especially warlike, but he takes great pride in his family's military traditions, particularly those of Shaka, Cope 50, D. Yet Shepstone failed to convince Cetshwayo to yield more land to European settlers. As long as the Zulu kingdom remained independent, British plans for confederation were blocked. Although London instructed colonial authorities to avoid war, they chose to ignore those orders. On December 11, 1878, they delivered to Cetshwayo an ultimatum impossible to accept. The Zulus must pay fines for alleged offenses, surrender certain chiefs, disband their army, abandon the Zulu military system, grant Christian converts and missionaries new rights, and accept a British political agent with authority over Zulu affairs. Except for the fabricated fines, every demand struck at the heart of Zulu sovereignty, and the king could not comply. When Cetshwayo rejected the ultimatum, the British seized their pretext for war. On January 11, 1879, they invaded the Zulu kingdom. Commanding the expedition was Lord Chelmsford, a veteran of the Crimean War and other colonial campaigns. Having recently fought the Xhosa, he underestimated African warriors, a grave mistake. The invasion force numbered about 7,800 men, mostly regular soldiers armed with Martini Henry rifles. They were supported by artillery pieces, a rocket battery, and several Gatling guns. African auxiliaries from tribes already under British control fought alongside them in the native contingent led by white officers. 9 out of 10 of these African soldiers carried only assegai spears, while a few wielded old Snider rifles. Poorly trained, they were intended for support, not front-line combat. To distinguish themselves from the enemy Zulus, they wore red bandanas. A more effective auxiliary force was the native horse, recruited mainly from the Amangwan people, traditional foes of the Zulus. They wore tan uniforms, rode Basuto ponies, and carried carbines along with their spears. The final part of Chelmsford's invasion army consisted of white settler soldiers, such as the Natal Carbineers, led by George Shepstone, son of Theophilus Shepstone, numbering around 300 riders. Chelmsford was fully confident that his combined forces would destroy the Zulus. His plan called for 3 British-led columns to advance toward Ulundi, the Zulu capital, the left under Colonel Evelyn Wood, and the right under Colonel Charles Pearson, both meant to divert Zulu attention from Ulundi itself. Chelmsford's central column is expected to have an easy advance once it marches straight toward Ulundi and the main Zulu army. Meanwhile, King Cetshwayo gathers around 35,000 warriors to defend his kingdom and addresses them on January 17th with a passionate speech. "I have not gone overseas to seek out the white man, yet they have entered my land. I would not be surprised if they take our wives, our cattle, our crops, and our fields. What can I do? I bear no hatred toward the white man, nor do I know why they have come to me. They wish to seize me. What should I do?" His warriors answer in unison, "Leave it to us. We will devour the white man and destroy them. They will never take you while we still live." David, 96. So Lord Chelmsford's 7,800 soldiers have invaded the Zulu kingdom, and King Cetshwayo's 35,000 warriors are marching to confront them. The very first battle will shatter the British campaign plan completely. Chelmsford's advance into Zulu territory moves painfully slowly. His troops are delayed by cumbersome wagon trains and heavy rains that flood rivers and turn the roads into mud. Convinced that the Zulus won't fight until he nears their capital, Chelmsford sends detachments from his central column on scouting missions. The Zulu army, however, moves with far greater speed. Their scouts identify Chelmsford's column as the main British force, and they cleverly draw the reconnaissance units away from the camp, weakening his main body. They even succeed in luring Chelmsford himself away from his base at Isandlwana. So confident is he that he violates British Army doctrine and leaves the camp unfortified before departing. But the British are walking straight into a trap. Their scouts spot small Zulu groups moving nearby and assume they are isolated war bands. In truth, these are the advance elements of the main Zulu army, 20,000 strong, closing rapidly on the unprotected camp. By January 22nd, the Zulus are within striking distance. Chief Nshingwayo Kamahole, a veteran commander, hesitates to attack, but his scouts report how exposed the British are. One warrior later recalled, "Our scouts told the leaders that the white soldiers were scattered about the camp like goats grazing on a hillside, and that surely the spirits of our ancestors had delivered them into our hands to be slain. The young men demanded the attack, and their will prevailed. T.E. New March Papers. While Chelmsford dines at a picnic 20 kilometers away, British scouts in the camp spot Zulus approaching. Acting Commander Lieutenant Colonel Henry Pauline fears an attack but badly underestimates the enemy's numbers. He has only 1,600 men and 2 7-pounder cannons, and still does not strengthen the position. At around 11 a.m., British riders chasing stray cattle suddenly come face to face with the entire Zulu army. One cavalryman, James Hamer, remembered, "As we rode up, we saw the Zulus like ants before us, silent, motionless, in perfect order, stretched across the plain. We guessed their number at 12,000. James Hamer Papers. Realizing they've been discovered, the Zulus abandon stealth and launch a full-scale assault. They advance in Shaka's Horns of the Buffalo formation, the chest surging from the valley to strike the front of the camp while the horns swing wide to envelop both flanks. A British soldier later described the attackers' ranks as 10 to 12 men deep. Colonel Pauline still fails to grasp the danger. Rather than falling back to a strong defensive line at the base of Isandlwana Hill, he stretches his men thin along the camp's outer edge, a fatal mistake. Though the British rifles and cannons initially tear through the advancing Zulus, halting the chest with deadly volleys and bursts of shrapnel, their extended line cannot hold. The Zulu horns begin to curve around the flanks, tightening the trap. Under mounting pressure and running low on ammunition, the British are forced to pull back toward the camp to reach their supplies. But as they withdraw, the Zulus seize their moment and charge. Captain Essex of the 24th Regiment was there when the assault broke. In an instant, all was chaos. Few men had time to fix bayonets before the enemy was among us, stabbing with fearful precision. Officers called for steadiness, but within moments the retreat became general. David. 140 Trooper Sparks of the Natal Mounted Police described the collapse. There was terrible confusion, no formation for defense of the camp. The Zulu army spread its wings across our flanks, hemming us in on 3 sides, and within minutes the camp was overrun by countless Zulus. Any effective defense was impossible. Saul David, Zulu, Pa 136. The battle descends into a massacre. A small number of mounted British soldiers manage to hack their way out of the chaos, leaving behind scattered groups who make desperate last stands. The Zulus take no prisoners. Around 1,300 British-led troops are killed, among them George Shepstone, son of Theophilus Shepstone. Zulu casualties are uncertain, but likely exceed 1,000 dead and wounded. The Battle of Isandlwana is a decisive Zulu triumph. Chelmsford's central invasion force lies destroyed. Yet as the slaughter ends, another battle is about to begin. On the river marking the border between Natal and the Zulu Kingdom stands a small mission station, now converted into a British hospital and supply post, under Lieutenant John Chard of the Royal Engineers. At midday on January 22nd, 2 terrified survivors from Isandlwana gallop in, warning that the Zulus have annihilated the central column and will soon reach Rorke's Drift. Chard realizes that flight means certain death. The Zulus are too fast, so he decides to stay and fight. The garrison rushes to throw together an improvised defensive perimeter. Altogether, they number about 400 men. Meanwhile, a Zulu force of roughly 4,000 approaches, led by King Cetshwayo's half-brother, Prince Dabulamanzi Kampande. His regiment had been kept in reserve at Isandlwana and saw little fighting, so the prince, eager for glory, defies his king's orders not to cross into British territory. By 4 p.m., the Zulus arrive. The Natal native horse and Natal native contingent, along with their British officers, panic and flee, leaving Chard with just 150 defenders. Realizing his position is too exposed, Chard orders a wall of biscuit boxes built as a fallback line. Ferocious hand-to-hand combat soon erupts, and when the northern defenses begin to give way, Chard pulls his men back to the inner barricade. Amid the confusion, the hospital catches fire before it can be fully evacuated, and most of the patients are killed. By 7:00 p.m., the exhausted British, low on ammunition, cling to their final barricade, determined to fight to the last. The Zulus, believing victory is within reach, launch wave after wave of assaults through the night, the battlefield lit by the burning hospital. Private James Hitch, wounded in the shoulder, recalls the chaos. In one of their furious rushes, 3 Zulus came at me. I shot the first, bayoneted the second, and the third leaped into the laager but quickly turned and ran. A wounded Zulu nearby then took up a rifle and shot one of my comrades, Private Nicholas, dead through the head. Home 284-285. Despite their bravery, the Zulus struggled to coordinate attacks in the darkness. The British managed to repel each new charge. Around midnight, the intensity of the assault begins to fade, and by 2 a.m., the fighting ceases, though sniping continues until 4 p.m. After 12 brutal hours, the Battle of Rorke's Drift is over. The mission station still stands. The Zulus suffer up to 850 dead and wounded, many of whom are killed by the British after the fight ends. The defenders lose 14 dead, while most survivors are injured. The ferocity of the battle leads to 11 Victoria Crosses being awarded, 7 to soldiers of the 24th Regiment alone, the most ever granted to one regiment for a single action in British history. The clash is later immortalized in the 1964 film Zulu, starring Michael Caine and Mangosuthu Buthelezi, great-grandson of King Cetshwayo. To explore Rorke's Drift in greater depth, the Battle Guide virtual tour offers a detailed look at the engagement. Yet the heroism at Rorke's Drift cannot disguise the overall collapse of the British campaign. Following Isandlwana and Rorke's Drift, the situation is dire. Chelmsford's main column is destroyed and the others are isolated and vulnerable. The Zulus quickly encircle and besiege Pearson's force at Eshowe. Desperate, Chelmsford orders Colonel Wood to mount a diversionary attack to relieve pressure. On March 28th, Wood assaults a Zulu hill fort at Hlobane and immediately runs into disaster. The defenders fight fiercely from fortified positions, using captured British rifles to pour deadly fire into the attackers. A violent thunderstorm and poor coordination add to the chaos. Nearly 1/3 of Wood's men, including almost all South African volunteers of the Border Horse, are killed, forcing him to retreat to a fortified camp at Kambula. But the victory at Hlobane makes Zulu commander Mnyamana Kankengalele dangerously overconfident. Back in January, King Cetshwayo had warned his generals, "If you find the white men entrenched behind forts full of holes, do not attack. It will be useless. If you find him out in the open, then strike, for there you can devour him completely." Natal Mercury, January 22, 1879. However, instead of heeding this advice, Kankengalele directs his 20,000-strong Zulu army, many veterans of Isandlwana now armed with captured British rifles, toward the British camp at Kambula. But Colonel Wood has absorbed the lessons of earlier defeats. His 2,000 men have arranged their wagons into a fortified laager and cleared the surrounding ground to create an open killing field for their rifles and 6 7-pounder guns. On March 29th, the Zulus launch their attack using the famed Horns of the Buffalo formation. Yet the disciplined British rifle and artillery fire from behind their defenses mows down hundreds. Some determined warriors reach the wagons but are unable to breach the line. Several times the Zulus regroup and charge again, but each assault collapses under relentless gunfire. After 4 hours of intense combat, their strength is spent and they begin to withdraw. Wood then unleashes 600 cavalry, turning the retreat into a chaotic rout. The Battle of Kambula is a decisive British triumph. They suffer only 28 killed and 54 wounded, while inflicting around 2,000 casualties, many of the wounded executed afterward. The crushing defeat shatters Zulu morale. One warrior later recalls, "Our hearts were broken at Kambula. I dared not go within a shot of the British after this time." Guy 210. The Zulus have lost irreplaceable warriors, and despite the captured firearms, they remain hopelessly outgunned. In April, Lord Chelmsford marches with a new column to relieve Pearson's besieged force at Eshowe. The Zulus intercept him at the Battle of Gingindlovu on April 3rd, but this time Chelmsford is prepared. The British dig in, backed by rocket batteries and Gatling guns. When the Zulus attack, a storm of bullets and explosives tears through them. 1,000 warriors fall in just 20 minutes. The survivors flee, suffering even more losses when the British cavalry pursues them. Now the momentum of the war has decisively shifted in Britain's favor. King Cetshwayo, seeing the tide turn, attempts to negotiate to save his realm, but the British dismiss his appeals. On May 31st, a massive reinforced British army of 25,000 men invades Zululand again. Among them is Prince Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, son of the exiled Emperor Napoleon III, serving as an artillery officer. Eager for action, the young prince joins reconnaissance missions deep into enemy territory and is killed by a Zulu war band on June 1st. Ironically, the Zulu War ends the Bonaparte dynasty forever. As Europe reels from news of the prince's death, the Zulus rally what remains of their army for one final stand. By July 3rd, the British reach the outskirts of Ulundi, the Zulu capital. They form a massive square formation, reinforced with artillery and Gatling guns, and wait for the inevitable Zulu onslaught. The warriors charge with all their remaining fury, their independence hanging in the balance. A British soldier later wrote, "Our fire didn't check them at all. Nearer they came, 100 yards, 80 yards, still rushing on, a thick black mass. Lord Chelmsford galloped up shouting for us to fire faster. The 9-pounder tore through them again and again, but at such close range the canister didn't burst. Everyone thought it would be hand-to-hand within a minute. When at 60 yards the mass faltered, wavered, and withered away." Wright 178. The Battle of Ulundi lasts barely half an hour. British rifle, artillery, and Gatling fire annihilate the Zulu ranks. The survivors flee. The British enter Ulundi and burn it to the ground. King Cetshwayo escapes, but is captured and imprisoned on August 28th. After 6 months of war, the Anglo-Zulu conflict ends. British-led forces lose 1,900 dead, while the Zulus suffer roughly 7,000 fatalities. No peace treaty follows. The British simply carve the kingdom into 13 puppet chiefdoms, renaming it Zululand. Civil wars erupt among the new chiefs. In 1883, the British reinstate Cetshwayo to restore order, but he soon dies after battling another British-backed rival. Zululand remains semi-independent under British control until 1897, when it is annexed to Natal Colony. A 1906 rebellion fails to overturn British rule. Zulu sovereignty is not revived until 1994, when post-apartheid South Africa creates KwaZulu-Natal. The Zulu resistance to Imperial Britain endures in legend, but it was far from the only stand against empire. A century earlier, across the Indian Ocean, Tipu Sultan of Mysore had waged his own war against the British East India Company. His advanced artillery so impressed the British that they scavenged his weapons for study, and his legacy remains fiercely debated. To learn more, watch Tipu Sultan, Tiger, or Tyrant by Extra History, available exclusively on Nebula, the streaming platform created with historians and educators. Subscribe at Nebula TV Real-Time History for 40% off an annual plan. You'll also find exclusive series like Red Atoms, about the Soviet nuclear program, and early ad-free releases of all our videos. Special thanks to Spencer Jones for his expertise in this episode. Sources are listed in the video description. If you support us on Patreon or Nebula, thank you. Your help makes this possible. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this is a production of Real-Time History, the only channel that still remembers the Shaka Zulu movie. With David Hasselhoff. Never forget.